What's up, everyone? In this episode, Mike Bell, who's currently the bench coach for the Twins, talks a little about his time with the Diamondbacks, where he was the director of player development, and what he's looking for when he was interviewing all the candidates and coaches who potentially were going to help out the organization. So if you're interested in professional baseball, or maybe you're interested in just becoming a better coach in general, this is a great episode for you because Mike has a ton of experience. He comes from a baseball family. His brother, David's currently the manager for the Reds. His dad managed. His grandpa played in the big leagues too. So he just comes from a really big baseball family, and it's a very great episode for anyone who wants to get into coaching or just wants to become a better coach. So hope you enjoy this episode with Mike Bell. All right, we're now live with Mike Bell. Mike, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Patrick.
So you're now a bench coach with the Twins, but I know you spent, the past, 13 years with the Diamondbacks, even before that. When you were with the Diamondbacks for the past 13 years, like what did you learn from a coaching standpoint throughout all your experience there? Because that's a long time, and you were in a bunch of various different roles.
Yeah. Oh man, that is a fairly long conversation, I guess. I did play with the Diamond. I was drafted by him in the expansion draft, and then traded from there. And then I guess what was that, 96 or 7? I don't know. Years are running together, but so then I ended up signing with them. Played for them in AAA in 2003. Met some good people there, and then ultimately they brought me back to manage in 2007 in Yakima, Washington. So that's where my career really started as a coach, and my second life in baseball. And I learned a lot. I worked under Josh Burns and AJ Hinch for a few years, and then it was Jerry DiPoto, and then Kevin Towers, Tony La Russa, Dave Stewart, Mike Kazin, and his current crew now. So it's a lot of different things you learn. When I first started managing, I really, as long as I've been in the game and grew up in the game, I honestly didn't know what I was doing. You're just kind of figuring it out. As a player, it's all about you, and as a coach, it's all about the players, and that takes some adjusting. There's insecurities you're dealing with. Am I good enough? Do the players like me? Do they respect me? How do I earn that? Just the in-game stuff that you don't think about as a player. So you start to learn and develop all of that. So I managed for a few years. I was a field coordinator for a year, and then I was a farm director for 9 years, I guess, or I might have finished my 10th. I don't know. It's right around there. And then start to coach again this past year. And you think about some of the things you did your first year, like my year in 2007, and you kind of cringe. You're like, gosh, I can't believe I did that, or I can't believe I took that so personal, or whatever the case is. And sometimes you can't put your finger on what you learned, but you've learned something, and you've changed. And oftentimes it's just life, being more secure in what you're doing and what you believe in. And but I'm still developing every day.
Was there certain times where you're coaching and you're seeing something in a player, and you're like, man, if I could go back in time when I was a player and change something, like it would have been what I'm trying to get this guy to do?
Yeah. And I'm not an over mechanically minded person. I actually really enjoy the leadership part of it, the mentoring, the emotional issues that players deal with, and coaches and staff. But sure, you do think back, and for me, it's just knowing that it's okay and things are going to be okay. I put a lot into the game, like we all have. I think looking at it now, I probably put more pressure on myself than needed. Uh, and it's I talk to players, it's talking to them about being themselves and doing what they feel is right and they believe in, and some of it would just be, I don't know, beat up, play the game a little bit more free, but I think sometimes, and some people, and me being one of them, can't really do that at that time. It's just
Yeah.
the way it is. Now if I could go back with the experiences and everything I have now, for sure, I'd play the game a little differently.
Did you feel any of that internal pressure just because your dad played 18 years in the big leagues and your grandpa played 15 years in the big leagues?
Yeah, I guess that's what I was referring to a little bit. Yes, at the time I didn't realize it. Looking at it now and kind of stepping away from it and looking back on my career, for sure. I mean, I and I remember how I felt and think, how did I not recognize that? Um, but yeah, I mean, as young as a kid, I felt that. And maybe now because I have a son, and we've talked about him before. He's at Xavier University pitching, and he'll swear to you up and down that there's no pressure. He'll talk about I support him, and my dad's great and everything. But it's like, looking back in 20 or 30 years for him, I guarantee he's going to say he felt pressure. And
Mhm.
it's not that any of us put it on him. It's like his great grandpa played, his grandpa played, his dad played, his brother or his uncles played. And he was actually the first kid on either side of the family, and all of a sudden he's supposed to pick up the torch and follow those footsteps. But it's just, I think it's the way it is. Some people handle it better, some struggle with it. It's just life.
Yeah, I'm sure there's not. Yeah, like you said, there's not a ton you can really do about it. Just support them.
Yeah, that's right. That's
So,
right.
so you mentioned you really enjoyed being in those leadership positions. Um, what did you learn from being in a leadership position? Because I'm sure like, when you first got that job, you looked at it differently than towards the end of your tenure there.
Yeah, when I first got the job, I again, I got thrust into some positions that I honestly wasn't prepared for. Um, and you have to figure it out quick. It's just whether it's managing, whether it's a coordinator or farm director or bench coach. And the one thing I did and always have been is I think I've been pretty vulnerable, um, open with the ups and downs, and the things that I'm good at and the things that I struggle with. And in each of those positions, I would talk to coaches, sometimes players, um, coordinators, whatever the position, and just ask people for help. And I don't think I knew at the time what I was doing, but I think that was my leadership style. I think that's how I built culture and an environment, including people. Like all these little subtle things that come off of sharing yourself, your stories, being open, being honest, being vulnerable. And that's kind of how my leadership style evolved. And what we did in Arizona in the minor league level, we ultimately brought people in. I think that had some of those traits, although we diversified, I think, the types of people we brought in. Um, but probably 5, 6 years into my time as a farm director, um, after building relationships, my closest friends in the organization, talking about our culture and environment, I started to realize how we got to where we were. And I am really proud of it, still proud of it. And it's just it's just who I am. I think I learned to be myself, to be humble, to I don't know, be okay with who I was. Again, the good and the bad, and it worked for us.
So when it comes to being a farm director, a lot of times you're involved with hiring new people on board, and there's people listening to this who want to get into professional baseball, or maybe just want to get into even college coaching. They're gonna have to interview for a job, like wherever it is. What advice would you give them from someone who's been on the other side and actually doing the interview?
Yeah, I've done quite a few interviews. I so it's hard. I mean, for me, it doesn't always work for everybody, right?
Yeah.
I think I always look for people um, that had at least those some of those traits that I was talking about that our culture was built on. People, and I have to be as vulnerable as I get sometimes, um, but at least honest, open, uh, I think caring, thoughtful, a good teammate, um, and somebody that is ready to learn, willing to learn, and capable of learning. And um, that's what I look for. I I I think, and especially as you go up, I know early on in the minor leagues, the mechanics and um, a lot of what's new in the game. You have to have people that can build that foundation. But as you go up, you just have to be able to connect with players. You have to be able to do that. And in Arizona, I think I, I we've talked about other guys that we've had in the system, but I think ultimately I wanted guys that I knew could connect with the players, and it not just in a baseball sense, but connect with them on a personal level. I always feel like once you do that with a player, um, it sometimes doesn't matter how much you know at that point. They have confidence, they trust you. That player can go out and play with freedom. They come to the park with peace, and ultimately they start to reach their ability.
Yeah, it's really interesting how when were answering that question, like you mentioned mechanics for a little bit, but everything else, it wasn't really technical knowledge that you're looking for.
Yeah, I you have to have it.
Yeah.
Like you do have to have it. It's just such I'm on Twitter. I don't do much on Twitter. I follow it. Um, there's so many smart people out there. Um, and I see kind of the arguments unfolding on Twitter, um, and I'm looking at each one thinking, man, that guy's pretty smart, or this guy's pretty smart, uh, and I think it's great. I think it's really helped a lot of people, but I do believe that has to stop somewhere, and the just the personal connections have to take over. And there's some combination of that. So um, it's like when you put together a staff, you're trying to put a diverse staff together because there's a lot of players out there that didn't feel like I did, or me trying to make a personal connection was a turnoff to them, or whatever. So you need somebody else there to pick that up for you. You're a team, and you're trying to connect with every player, and so you have to have a diverse staff. Some have to have a lot of emotional intelligence, and are able to sit down with young players and kids, and talk them through things. Some players now want a lot of mechanical help, and you have to be able to give that to them. At least have the ability to, where it stops and where you ask them to just go compete. Like, you can talk about that later, but I do think a diverse staff is important. Um, but they'll have to have some core values that are similar to what you have currently in the system.
When it comes to you getting back on the field and coaching, kind of what you're just referring to of building those relationships with players and how some players may not want that personal connection. You just how do you go about like realizing that or knowing that they just want to be told exactly what to do? They don't really care how many brothers, or anything anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sure. That I think the higher you go, the more it's like that a little bit. I don't know why. I think in the past I might have taken things personal. Like if I couldn't connect with somebody, then it's my fault, or I'm not good, or whatever it is. Um, I think now it's like you're just yourself. You walk around the field, you help guys where they need it. Um, and sometimes for me, it's more just helping a coach. I could be catching balls for infielders or hitting some fungos or walking around shagging, talking to guys. And I just myself would just say hello. And
Yeah.
like some guys kind of want to dig in and you have a terrific relationship. The next guy you go to, it's, they're getting their mind locked in for the game and that's all it is. So, and it takes time. I don't, especially this year in the COVID season, it was really hard. You're not around as much. You got a mask on. People can't see your facial expressions. Sometimes they don't hear you as well. Like there's a lot of different hurdles with the season and connecting with people this year. But I know it takes time. Like it takes, 2, 3, 4, 5 years to develop these relationships. And at the major league level, you don't, or any minor league level, probably more so at the minor leagues, but you don't always get that time. So you just do the best you can. You be yourself, you be honest, you care, you're thoughtful of what the players are going through, and help them any way you can.
This was your first year with the Twins at the big league level coaching. Since you were a bench coach, I know there's some people out there who may not actually know what a bench coach does. Could you explain that to anyone listening?
No, it is. It's tricky. When I got the job, I I talked to probably 6, 7, 8, 9 bench coaches. I talked to my brother had been a bench coach, my dad had been a bench coach, and multiple other bench coaches and even managers, kind of asking them what they thought about the position, um, what they look for in a bench coach, and every single one of them was different. And I just kind of learned that you're working for an organization, manager, and a group of other staff, and I feel like my job is just to help where I can, um, to see the holes, fill the holes, try to make things better. If I have an idea, um, talk through it with guys, um, physically help where I can in the cage or the field, shagging, doing the bucket. It doesn't, it really doesn't matter. You look where not that it's we're not getting the job done, but just where you could help and make jobs easier for others. And I think that's what I did, and I'm still learning that. You know, in games a little bit easier. Just it's I prepare for the game just like as if I was a manager. Um, understanding pitching matchups. Our offense, where we might want to make moves, line up stuff. And then sitting in the dugout by the managers, just offering um, suggestions, thoughts, confirming different things that he's doing, just making sure that his job is easier in a game, or he's more in, and ultimately what he decides to do, and that's a lot of fun too.
Is there a certain part of the job that you like really enjoy, like preparing for a game, like lineups, scouting, anything particular?
Yeah, I do like preparing for the game. It's funny, I was a position player, but I've almost I'm not. necessarily good at it, or who knows. But I really enjoy the pitching side of it, and maybe it's because pitchers were so tough on me when I was playing. I don't know, trying to understand why, but like the pitching side of it, not developing pitchers necessarily, but just seeing what they do good, how they match up against our hitters, or our pitchers, their hitters. I like to kind of plan out the game and think of how we're going to get from the fourth, fifth, sixth inning to the ninth. Thinking through things like that. I really enjoy doing. And then the in game, once the game starts, you feel a little bit like a player again. You'll never feel like a player or be a player, but that adrenaline starts to rush through you a little bit, and you still get a lot of the highs and lows. There's plenty of times where I failed to mention something to our manager, or I was asked my opinion, and we might have gone the way I said, and it failed. And so you got to go back and think why, or how'd that happen, or I got to make sure I stay on top of this area, whatever, and then you get better and build from there.
Aren't you, as a bench coach, also responsible for like giving the yes or no on challenges during the game?
Yeah, everybody does a little bit different. Ultimately, the manager is going to make that call. I think there's some teams that probably have different levels of confidence. That information gets to the manager, and he makes a call. Some rely heavily on the video uh, person, reviewing the play in the clubhouse, and ultimately there I'm listening and have to relay what the video um, coach saw, and that's kind of how we do it. So I do enjoy that. I was very, very concerned about that when I started. Just I was concerned about the rules. Am I going to mess up a rule? Do I know all the rules? And the answer is no. I don't know all the rules, and yes, I will mess something up. But you try and get better at that stuff. But I was also worried about the uh, the video replays, and I was like, God, am I gonna forget to run over to the phone? Am I gonna, you know, say challenge and I mean don't challenge? Or you just start to have those little nightmares. It's like when you run out to the field, you forgot your clothes or something. So it's similar to that, but we settled in, and it keeps you in the game. You watch every play, you watch it a little differently. You're watching guys touch the bases. You're watching, the catcher's interference. There's a bunch, and I just in the person I work with on the other end of that phone, basically we just said I'm going to run over every time, but I think there's could be anything, and I did. I feel like I accomplished that, and even times when plays weren't even reviewable. But I just wanted to make sure we had our bases covered.
So when you're like on the phone, is it simply like he's telling you like yes to challenge or no?
Pretty much, yeah. You got 20 seconds from the time that you say you're challenging it, so it's not a lot of time, and he's got, I don't know, 20 different views of this, and so that's how we've have chosen to do it, and feel that we're a little bit more effective with it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's very interesting to get a different perspective on, the game itself and you being a bench coach. And I didn't personally even know exactly all that went into being a bench coach. And you mentioned how you didn't even know all the rules. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I probably need to do a better job of, and do this off season of actually learning. There's so many rules out there. Like, I mean,
There are, and the organization does a great job of teaching us and different exercises, and so yeah, and a lot of times I think it gets overwhelming. Like, oh man, I'm gonna mess this rule up. you can always slow the game down, call time, get a rules check. Like there's things that you can do. There's other people in the dugout, and sometimes it's somebody just saying like, can they do that? And you don't have to have the answer, but you can also say, let's go out and talk to the umpire, something like that. So you don't have to have all the answers, but you do need to continue to learn and be okay not knowing and asking somebody for help that's on the field, like an umpire or another coach.
Do you like the challenge? Because I that wasn't around when you were playing.
Uh, I'm kind of indifferent, I guess, a little bit. I don't know. After doing it for a year, that was part of my job, so I enjoyed it. So I would say I do like it. Constantly trying to make it better. Um, you'd like to see it move along faster at times, but those guys are doing a good job. The umpires and MLB of coming to the right conclusion. I guess sometimes you question like, why is that not reviewable, but this is, or you start thinking about, well, you only get one challenge, but there could be other calls that are wrong. Like, how is that? Are we trying to get all the calls right, or how does that work? And there's questions with it, but hey, it's baseball. There's no perfect answers. And I was always like, I kind of got, I always, my relationship with umpires was good as a player. As a manager, I got thrown out a lot. It was kind of what I thought you did at that time in my, the young period of my life. But I like dealing with that part of the game, and with that is sometimes it's bad calls, sometimes the calls go your way, and it's teaching your players. That was part of it too. When we had a stretch where you had some calls go against you, it's helping them understand that they need to focus on their game and not let that affect them. That was part of managing. So you kind of miss that a little bit, but I understand the way the cameras are now and technology and everything that's involved in the game, like how important getting calls right is.
Did you ever go out getting ready to argue with an umpire, like wanting to get thrown out, or would ask the umpire to throw you out?
No, no, I never. I was a big believer in getting thrown out motivates your team. I just, as a player, that didn't do it for me. Like I think I had enough internal drive to like want to play the game. Um, I think when I got thrown out a lot, like I grew up watching, my dad got thrown out a lot, Lou Piniella, like all these guys that got thrown out. So I thought it was like part of the job. It was actually something that I never really wanted to do, but felt like I had to. Um, and doing it over again, I would be a different type of manager. Um, and with the review process now, it's a little tougher to get thrown out anyways. But I never went out to like, oh, this will motivate our team, and I better be doing a better job of motivating and leading than thinking I had to go out and get kicked out.
How would you handle disagreeing with calls now, like as a manager?
Well, I guess if it's a play that's not reviewable, it's just there's so many things that like we have the answer right in front of us. We know if it's was right or wrong. I honestly, I think I'd probably go out, ask them what they saw. If I really thought they missed it, I would ask them to get help. Sometimes they will, and then the call is made, and there's nothing to say. Sometimes they won't, and you just keep trying. I think it's like any other relationship. You keep trying to build trust with that umpire or those umpires. Ultimately, it's going to help you. Not that they're going to give you calls, but I think you're going to be able to trust them more when they say, "Yeah, I got that one right," or you know what, I may have missed that one. Just hard for me dealing with uh, grown people that like to yell and scream at me. It just doesn't make as much sense to me now. But I get it. It's still part of the game when it happens. So
What about though if it's a player who disagreed with a call and he just got thrown out, and so it's more along the lines of you having his back, and that's why you get thrown out.
Yeah, I think
Do you agree with that?
um, so. I think you might argue a little bit just to get the player out of there. I think the only time I'd have a real problem is if an umpire directed something personally to our player. I think that's when it becomes something different. But generally, when a player is yelling, arguing, you probably run out pretty quick. Maybe argue, try and get the focus off the player, get the player out of there. But once he gets ejected, it's kind of there's not a whole lot you can do. Me getting ejected right after that, like I don't know what that does, but
Yeah.
maybe in some case there are some cases where you probably have to do something.
Yeah, that is funny you bringing up Lou Piniella because I'm just in my head visualizing him just throwing bases around. So I could see how you, as a young
Yeah, yeah,
manager, I mean, growing up
yeah,
watching him.
yeah, right. Yeah, I saw him plenty. My brother played for him, and I mean, there was a lot of managers that.
Did your dad do that
Yeah.
too? Like copy like Lou Piniella and throwing stuff around?
No, no, he got thrown out plenty, but I never saw him throw anything. It was never like theatrics or a big show. It was just get pretty heated, and he'd get thrown out, and he'd walk back in. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
Mike, I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to connect. I know I've known about you for a while. I mean, we went to the same high school, Moeller, but just random that, or Jared Gaynor, a good buddy of mine, just is now with the
yeah,
Twins too, and you guys had breakfast. So small world, I guess. But I appreciate you coming on today.
yeah. No, likewise. I mean, shoot, we both went to the same high school, and the shame of it because I don't go back. I didn't even really know till I was following different a lot of hitting guys that I was trying to learn. So I was trying to follow good hitting coaches, and you connect one coach to another because you like them, and then sure enough, I had followed you, and then I saw you got the Orioles job, and I saw Moeller connection, and
Yeah.
so I'm. It's great to get to meet you, and well, over Zoom at least,
Yes.
anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.